This is Gemara Nazir Daf Mem Beis, the daf for the very auspicious and incredible day of Tainis Esther. Today's share has been generously sponsored as the Schus Yeshua's for Shlema of our David Ben Dava B'Siyata D'Shmaya. The learning the entire Chabura should bring only good results. Complete Refuah Shalema. We're holding on the top line of Mem Beis Amid Aleph. Amar Mar. As we continue the sugya of the Nazir cutting off his head, and as we learned in the previous 2 days, Sadatin just by a Nazir, there are 3 types of people that shave off their head. We have a Nazir, we have a Mitzaira, and we have a Levi. Now, Amar Mar, let's go back to the beginning of everything, in which the Mishnah Negayim taught us, V'kulam shegilchu shaloi bitar, if they cut off their hair without a razor, o sheshayru shtei sayros, or instead of shaving their entire head, they left over 2 hairs. Lo yalsa v'lo klum. They have not fulfilled their obligation. Why? They didn't use the right implement, or because they left over 2 hairs. So on this, Amar Rav Acha Breid Rav Ika Zaysei Meres teaches us 4 lines down. Rubai kekuloi midaraisa. This is the source. Yesterday we learned an incredible hidden source in the middle of Nazir for Aseidei Chaloisa Asei. And today we begin that this is the source for Rubai Kekulai, that on the Daraisa level, the majority of something is as if you have the whole thing. How do you know that? Mimai. From where do you know this? 5 lines down. Midikali Rachmani Gabe Nazir. The Torah by Nazir says, Bayom Hashvi Gal Chanu. On the 7th day, you should shave off his head. So why does it have to point this out? So from here we learn out for the extra mentioning of shaving off the head that here by Nazir, it's not enough if it's right. Here by Nazir, it needs to be kulai. But the diuk, the implication is, if we need a special pasuk teaching me that by Nazir, it has to be kulai. Ha ba'alma. Everywhere else in the world, they call it kulai. Rubai Kekulai. So says the Gemara, for the fact that we need a special limud, a special extra pasuk to teach us that you have to shave off the entire head by Nazir, shows us that usually in Kol Kula, Yud Roiv would suffice. So Mas Kivla Rav Yesi Rav Chanina, ask Rav Yesi Rav Chanina to Rav Acha, Hai ben Nazir Tamei Ksiv. 1 second. This pasuk is only by Nazir Tamei. So how do you know that if you did not do kulai, if you left off 2 hairs, that would also mess up a regular Nazir, a Nazir Tahar? This pasuk is teaching you by Nazir Tamei. If you don't get off every hair, it's a problem. But how do you know by a Nazir Tahar? And of course the difference is, a Nazir Tahar is when the time period of the Nazir ends, he shaves his head. Nazir Tamei is if in the middle of the time, they become Tamei and they got to start again. So I asked Rav Yezir Rav Chanina, how did you know that this applies also to Nazir Tahar? So Rav Acha answers, Amachaku Allah b'marava. They thought it was funny. A Purim joke. Michti, let's see. Nazir Tamei tibitar min alon. Where do I know that in general a Nazir Tamei has to use a tar razor? I mean Nazir Tahar Yalef. We learn it out from Nazir Tahar. So therefore, Lacey Nazir Tahar v'yelev Nazir Tamei. So with regard to the halacha of the shtei sayros, let the Nazir Tahar be learned from the Nazir Tamei. Ma Tamei kisher shtei sayros v'loi klom. It's nothing. Avid chanami kisher shtei sayros v'loi klom. Avid. So we learn out the Nazir Tahar from the Nazir Tamei. Beautiful on a Tainis Esther to have a laughing Gemara. I mean, we do have the word machaku in countless times in Shas, but not that many. And to have it on Tainis Esther is always beautiful. So, Ba'i Abai asked the Gemara. We're about 15 lines down. The first line is Ba'i, a bunch of shailos. Asks Abai, Nazir shegilach v'shiar shtei sayros. Nazir shaves his head, leaves over 2 hairs, and then tzamach roishay. The rest of his hair grows back, and then v'chazer v'gilchan mahu. Then he goes and shaves those 2 hairs. So shaves the whole head, leaves over 2 hairs. then all the hair grows back, then cuts those 2 hairs. Mau, mima akvi oiloi, meaning, because every hair was cut, just not at the same time. So is that makiv or not? Shaila number 1 of Abaye. Ba'i Rava. Shaila number 2. Nazir shigil v'niach shtei sayrois. Nazir shaves his head and leaves over 2 hairs. V'gilach achas v'nashar achas. And then he cuts off one of those 2. And then the last one falls out by itself. Mau, what's the halacha in this case? So Amar lei, Ravachami difti the Ravina. I don't understand Rava Shela. Gilach Saira. Saira coming by. So Ash Ravachami difti the Ravina. I don't understand. Gilach Saira, if he cuts off 1 hair, Saira coming by the Rava. Was that a Shaila? Of course! If there's 2 hairs and he cut off 1 works. So if there were 2 hairs and he cut off 1 hair, then the last hair falls out by itself. Of course it should work. What exactly was Rav Shaila? Elaima, you know what the Shaila was? Nashrach, first 1 falls out. So now all you have is 1 hair. And we know that always the minimum of hairs is 2. So the fact that 1 fell out by itself and now you have 1 left, and then Vigilach achas mahu. What's the status in that case? So Amar lei, Ravina responds, Gilach ein kan, Seyar ein kan. It's not called Gilach, and you don't have any hair left. Says the Gemara. 1 second. He's Seyar ein kan, Gilach yesh kan. If you don't have any hair, then you do have a Seyar. If you don't have any Seyar, right, then you have your Gilach, then it should work. Says the Gemara, you're right. Tachikam is what he meant. Afal pi shasir ein kan. Even though Lamaisa there's no hair, because 1 fell out and the other you shaved up. However, mitzvahs kiluach ein kan, you do not fulfill your mitzvah. So the shayla of Rava we've answered, but the first shayla of Abaya, the Gemara, leaves unanswered. Continues the Gemara in the middle of Membez Amalf with another Mishnah. Nazir chayfeif umefasfeis. A Nazir is allowed to shampoo his head. Pispos is to separate the hairs with your hands. Avoloi tzayrik. You can't comb your hair. Says the Gemara, 1 second. Who is the opinion that says you're allowed to shampoo? That you're allowed to separate the hairs, even though could be in the process you shampoo, you lather up your hair. Could be hair might fall out. So who is the opinion that says that's allowed? Rabbi Shemini, of course. Damar, we remember this for our Mola Mesechah Shabbos. Davar Sheinu Miskavin Mutter. You didn't have intent, so it's Mutter. But says the Gemara, 1 second. The Mishnah continued and said, Avaloi Sayrek, you can't comb the head. That's Asyan the Rabbanan. That seemingly is going with the Rabbanan. That holds that Davar Sheinu Miskavin is Aser. When you comb your hair, you don't intend on pulling out hairs. And yet it's saying it's Aser, Reisha Rav Shimon, V'sefer Rabbanan. Amar Rabba teaches us a very big yisoid in combing. Kula Rav Shimoni. Really, the whole Mishnah is Rav Shimon. However, Kol HaSoyrek Lahaser Nimin Midul Dolois Miskavin. The act of srika, the act of combing, is considered intent to pull out hairs. Why? So this is famously the reason, and the Rivash in Melechas Koizes made this more famous, that by combing, in order to get the hair straight, you got to pull out that knot. So the act of combing, whenever you're trying to comb and straighten the hair, by definition, means you're trying to pull out the hair, and therefore the whole Mishnah is Rav Shimon. So you got to shampoo and untangle, but you cannot comb the hair. Continues, which is similar to Shabbos, that you're allowed to touch your hair and things like that, but to do a full combing of the head is going to be an issue. Why? Because then you're going to be pulling out a hair. The real reason is, says the Bir Halacha, because if you comb your whole head, then it's a psik reisha that in the entire act of combing, even though one could ask in each brush stroke, it's not a psik reisha, but that's what the Bir Halacha says. You view the whole head as one, and therefore you cannot comb your hair on Shabbos. Okay, you can use a soft brush, a wide tooth comb, just be mitaki and fix your hair, not do the whole hair. Okay, let's continue. Says the Mishnah, Rabbi Yishmael Aimer. Says Rabbi Yishmael, Lo yachav ba'adama, can shampoo with earth, Mimnei shemisheres hasar. Why? Because shampooing your hair with earth causes the hair to pull out. Again, this was primitive. shampoo. Says the Gemara, 1 second. Ibaylu. Mibnei shehu masheres esaseir tanan is the reason that it pulls out the hair. Dilma mibnei, or is the reason mibnei hamasheres tanan, because that type of earth, Dilma, excuse me, mibnei hamasheres tanan, that the reason why it's usher is because that pulls out hair. Now, it sounds like a very fine nuance. What's the difference? Let's let the Gemara explain the nafkamina. If I have a type of earth, a type of shampoo that I know doesn't pull out hair, so if you're going to tell me that it pulls out tanan, so then you know what the Mishnah means. Hey, that earth that pulls out hair is ulcer. If it doesn't pull out hair, it's mutter. But if the shan in the Mishnah was you can't use earth because there are shampoos that pull out hair, meaning it's a gzeira d'Rabbanan. Because some shampoo pulls out hair, you can't use any shampoo. Klal, you can't use anything. We gotta wait for Eliyahu and Navi. Purim, good day for Eliyahu and Navi. It's always a good day, but a day that Purim won't be batal as lavai, so everyone's costumes will still have significance, and Mirta Hashem will get the answer. Says the Mishnah on the bottom of Membeis Amud Aleph, a bit of a famous Mishnah, we should call it, a Mishnah that deals with Hasra. Says the Mishnah, a Nazir who's drinking wine the entire day, and here we're going to learn out that if you do the same Aveira again and again without any Hasra, in the middle, the halacha is you only obligated one set of malchus. However, al tishta. They told this guy, don't drink wine. Vushais, and he keeps on drinking. And each time is a different iser, different malchus. Case number 2. If someone's getting a haircut all day, if they told him, I'll take a and he doesn't listen, each separate hasra creates a separate iser. He's been coming to me, Tami Meis, again, only one aver. So 3 applications in the Mishnah of someone continuing to do an avera the entire day, and the general rule is if there's no hasra, then it's all considered one avera. If there is separate hasrais, they keep on telling him, don't do it, and he doesn't listen, then each and every one has its own avera. So we turn over to Membeis on Membeis, and the Gemara, in dealing with this last din of coming Tami Lemeis, deals with different forms of Tumah Meis, and whether different types of Tumah Meis combine one with the other to be considered separate Averais, to be Mechayiv 1-2 times. Says the Gemara, Membeis, the top line, Itmar. Amar Rabba, Amar Rav Huna, Mikra, Mole, Diber HaKasaf. We have an open, explicit pasuk that says, Lo Yitamei, that a Nazir should not become Tamei. From here we learn out all forms of becoming Tamei. What does it mean, all forms of becoming Tamei? There's something called Maga, touching Tamah. There's something called Hes Masa, carrying Tamah. And then there's something called Oyhel, going into a room with Tamei. So the fact that Torah says Lo Yitamei includes everything. And then the Torah repeats, and the Torah says all the days of the Naziros on a Nefesh Meis Lo Yavoi should not enter. Seemingly talking about Tomas Oyel. La'asiroi ala Toma is an extra warning. La'asiroi ala Biyah, to give a warning on entering into a room with Toma. So we have 2 different psukim. One pasuk warns us about becoming Tamei the Nazir, and the other pasuk is an extra iser if the Nazir enters a house with Toma. So if you did that sequence, he becomes Tamei and then enters in a house with Toma, 2 malchus, aval Toma v'Toma lai. But is medayik the Gemara? Let's say the Nazir goes and touches a mace and he carries a mace. He will not get 2 sets of malchus because that's all considered within one umbrella. As the pasuk is only giving a second azhara, a second warning for Tomas Oil. That is the din of Rav Huna. But for Rav Yosef Amar, he argues. He says it's not true. You, Rava, said in the name of Rav Huna, and you were midayik. It's only din in Tomas Oil. Says Rav Yosef, no way. Rav Huna says it's din afilu toma v'toma. Why? Tama Rav Huna Nazir shuaymid v'beisak farois. For Nazir standing in a cemetery. So of course, the mere going into the cemetery is Aveira number 1. And then Vaishita loy mace. And what happens? He touches a mace, they extend him a mace. Umeis acher. Vaishita loy mace, excuse me. Umeis acher. And they extend to him and he touches his own mace and another mace. V'naga boy, and he touched it. Chayiv, he's obligated. So says Rav Huna, says Rav Yosef, the name Rav Huna, 1 second. He's in Amai. What is the reason that there's a second level of Tumah? There's a second Malchus by touching the mace. He's in the cemetery, and yet we're learning by touching the mace, he becomes Tamei. So we see that's not only a din in Tumah and then Tumas Oyel, even 2 forms of regular Tumah of Maga would have the same double Isser. As we see over here, he's in the cemetery and he touches one mace and he touches another. And we're seeing that each one has its own Isser. So Machlokes, Rabba, the name Rav Huna, versus Rav Yosef, the name Rav Huna, whether the double din of Tumah is only a din in Lo Yavai, in Oyel, or always. So Eisvei Abaye asked Rav Yosef, Kayin Shayala Mace. What happens if a Kayin is carrying a mace munach al ksefai? So the Kayin became Tamei. And then Vashit Loi Meisai, Umeis Acher, and they extend him his mace and another mace, when he touches it. Yachul Yoy Chayiv. You think that Kayin is Chayiv, Talmud Leimar. V'lo Yechalel. Says the Torah, he should not become profane, he should not become mundane, he should not become Tamei Meis to teach me. B'mi she'enai mechulo. That's only a Kayin who's tar. He should not touch the mace. Yatzazeh, this Kayin is excluded. She'u mechulo v'aymeid. He's already Tamei. So what do we see, says Rav Yosef? We see that the second Tumah is not adding on anything to the first Tumah. Rav Yosef just suggested in Rav Huna that every level of Tumah is another Aveira. But says the Gemara, we see clearly from a Kayin that is not true. That because the Kayin was Tamei, we allow him to touch another mace. Clearly there's not an extra Aveira in touching the second mace. So Amar Le, Rav Yosef responds, V'tikshel chamas nisan. Says Rav Yosef, what do you mean? But we can ask from our Mishnah, Detzanan, if you tell me mace all day, only chayiv once. But Amar Lo Tatame, Al Tatame, chayiv kol achas v'achas. V'amai. So says Rav Yosef back to Abaye, what's the reason? Each time they tell him don't become Tamei, he's a separate Aveira, Metayim v'koyim. What do you mean? But he's already Tamei. So we see clearly, says Rav Yosef, Elakasha Adadi. Clearly the Brisa is a stira to our Mishnah. So what are we going to have to answer? Loi kasha, kan b'chiburin, kan b'shaloi chiburin. You know, we're going to have to answer that there's a difference between the Mishnah and the Brisa. The Brisa is going to have to be referring to chiburin. The Brisa is going to be referring to that he's touching one corpse and then he touches the second. Whereas Kan shaloi b'chibur in the Mishnah, when the Mishnah says is an extra aveira each time he's mitamel mesim, is he touched the corpse, the mace, took his hand off, and then touched his again. So when it's not b'chiburin, it's not connected, that's when there's going to be an additional level of Isser. Ask the Gemara, 1 second. V'toma b'chiburin daraisa. Sounds like the way that you're answering of Yosef answered the steer to the Mishnah and the Brisa is that this din of Toma b'chiburin, when you're continuously attached to the corpse, is din daraisa. But Rav Yitzchak Bar Yosef, 7 lines from the bottom of Mem Daled Mem Beis Mem Beis. Rav Yitzchak Bar Yosef, Rav Yanei Eloi Amru. Toma b'chiburin elul tshuma v'kachim. It's a special din. Toma b'chiburin, that as long as you're connected, it's not an extra toma. Only by tshuma and kachim. Avol in Nazir v'isei Pesach. Loi, this din doesn't apply. V'yamir t'araisa, but if you, Rav Yosef, are learning that this din of toma b'chiburin, that as long as you're connected, it's not an extra level of toma. Ma'ishana, why should there be any difference between Pesach, between Nazir, between tshuma, between karbanos? It's all the same thing if it's a daraisa. So answer the Gemara, no. You know what the difference is? Kan bechiburi adam, kan bechiburi adam v'meis. The fundamental difference between the two cases. One is where the person who is tamei while he's touching the mace touches another person. Chiburi adam ve'adam. That is where Rav Yanai was discussing. That is when someone touches a person that's touching the Tumah itself, then he imparts only on a Derabanan level. But Kam Bechiburim Adam V'meis. But when someone is touching the corpse itself, then it's a higher level. So it's one level removed. Again, one is, Rav Yanai is referring to one person, Ruvain, and then there's another person, Shimon, comes along, Shimon's touching the corpse. And then someone touches Ruvain. So we have a whole chain over here. One guy touching the mace, another guy touching that guy. Then when that guy touches the second person, that's when it's on a Derabanan level. But when you're touching the person that touches the mace, that will, yes, be on a Deraisa level. And B'siyat Shemai will pick it up from here. And the next year, the Shir for Purim and Mirza Hashem.